Mrs Sheryll Murray.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And before I start, I do say an apology because so many members asked to intervene on my speech that I have decided not to take any interventions in the interest of time. And I do apologise to the Honourable Member for Strangford. I'll start by setting out a brief history. In the 1950s, it became clear that a bridge was needed between Plymouth and South East Cornwall, as the existing ferries could no longer cope. Whilst the councils went to national government, the government of the day could not afford this just after World War II, and a decision was taken at council level to fund a bridge at Saltash and incorporate what they called the floating bridge at Tor Point. These integral parts of the Tamar crossings were set out in an Act of Parliament and given the go-ahead. These crossings have become critical pieces of national infrastructure, with around 4,000 vehicles crossing a day in the early 1960s, becoming around 4,000 vehicles crossing an hour today on the bridge alone. Between 2001 and 2005, I was a member of the Tamar Crossings Joint Committee, while serving as a Cornwall County Councillor. Whilst the minutes are no longer easily accessible, I remember a sum of money was set aside for replacing the 3 chain crossings at Tor Point, as the 50-year-old chain ferries needed replacing. It's important to note that, as far as I can remember, no loans were taken by the Joint Committee before this time. It was found that the bridge could not support the European requirements for goods vehicle weights or the quantity of traffic around the same time, and money was needed to strengthen and widen the Tamar Bridge with the installation of 2 cantilevers. In order to be able to carry out these essential works, it was decided to take out a loan to cover the cost of the replacement ferries from the then Cornwall County Council. Whilst I do not have the full figure, I remember the loan was around £10 million over 25 years. I launched the second chain ferry, the Tamar 2, at Ferguson's Boatyard on the Clyde. What could not be foreseen is that this set out a trend, which I believe, whilst many will say was unaffordable, a trend where borrowing has been seen as a way to cover maintenance costs, renewing and replacing, and even building new infrastructure. The language, since I sat on the Joint Committee, has also changed, with council officers now claiming the crossings are on a user-pays basis, rather than using what is set out in the Acts of Parliament, which clearly state that they should be self-funding. This would indicate that the only way to fund the maintenance costs and new infrastructure is from toll income, which is clearly not the case. This is backed up by the fact that income is already generated from other means, including advertising boards on the ferries and operating the studs in the Saltash Tunnel on behalf of National Highways. Moving to today, should the Secretary of State agree the latest toll revision order, the tolls will have increased 100% in 4 years. This for many of those people who use the crossings to access the District General Hospital at Derriford in Plymouth, travel to their place of work or visit our main city, face what can only be described as an additional tax of up to £15 a week. I accept that a concession is available through the Tamar tag, but this does come with an initial charge and also a monthly service charge, which does not make it cost-effective for my constituents or those of the Honourable Member for Moorview, who are not regular users. I agree that the financial situation now has become quite serious. Whilst the 2 local authorities responsible for the crossings should, according to the Acts, fund any deficit, they say they have no budget for this. Decisions have been taken over the past years in a piecemeal way to increase borrowing, and this has risen from around £10 million of the initial loan to around £41 million today, and is currently increasing. If this was a business, it would have been bankrupt. Various decisions have been taken which, in my opinion, have not paid attention to good financial practice. During the COVID period, government grant paid both local authorities an amount of £1.6 million in total, which I believe represented about 85% of the reduction in income. Yet, despite the Joint Committee agreeing ways to mitigate the risk of toll collectors, 2 weeks later, the Lib Dem portfolio holder and the joint chair of for Cornwall, and the Labour portfolio holder and joint chair for Plymouth took the decision to stop charging tolls altogether. Had they not taken this decision, which was not put to the joint committee, the additional 15% shortfall in income could have then been received. My constituents and those of my right honourable friend, the member for Moorview, are clear. This cannot go on. Our constituents are being penalised for living and working on different sides of the Tamar, and it would seem no one cares. The Road Haulage Association face similar excessive charges. Figures that they have provided me with, which do not take account of the increase outlined in the application, shows that an average member based in South East Cornwall with 7 trucks ranging from 18 tonnes to 44 tonnes paid tolls of £4,550 in 2020, and this has now risen to £6,881 in 2022. And the 2023 costs to August 23 amounted to £5,409. Another haulier, with a fleet of 50 trucks in 2020, faced tolls of £32,083, which has increased to £58,100 in 2022, and the cost in August in 2023 was, with 75 trucks, was £90,730. A final example is that of a national operator with a local distribution centre based in Plymouth, where between 150 and 200 trucks use the crossings regularly, faced tolls of £50,000 between December 2020 and July 2021. These costs have now risen to £86,000 between August 2022 and July 2023. These costs will be reflected in the prices paid for goods by people from Cornwall and Plymouth. My constituents cannot be expected to fund vanity projects such as the multi-million-pound offices on top of the council tax that they already pay the two authorities. I notice that other projects are planned, such as the refurbishment of the toll collection booths at Tamar Bridge, which are not yet 20 years old, when a system of automatic number plate recognition is already being explored. There is a proposal to upgrade the offices and workshops at the Torpoint Ferry. I do not believe there has been enough attention paid to cost savings or generating income other than tolls, but we do need to change this. Income could come from a shop or restaurant incorporated at their offices, an idea which was raised by my friend, Councillor Lennox Boyd. There is land held by the bridge which is not fully utilised. There is also further marketing opportunities for the crossings. The Minister will know that my right honourable friend, the member for Moorview, and I met with his predecessor, and I have met him about the situation. The Peninsula Transport Group have already submitted a request for some funding towards the annual maintenance costs of the Tamar Bridge, which could be awarded from the RIS 3. This bridge is an integral part of the A38 trunk road, which was relocated to run through Saltash when the bridge was constructed. Prior to this, the trunk road ran through Torpoint and was joined by the ferry, which was described as a floating bridge. I believe the funding that the Peninsula Transport Group have requested should be conditional on no increase in tolls for that period, the 5-year period, and be accompanied by setting up the promised working group to look at future funding for these crossings outside but including the two local authorities. It should be noted that there are other ways to cross the Tamar, but these are not local to the area of Plymouth, our largest city on the peninsula. The other main crossing is via the A30 at the Dunheaved Bridge, which is over 20 miles away by road from Saltash. This bridge was built by the government around 1978 as part of the Launceston bypass. It is maintained by the government and indeed had to be rebuilt just over 20 years ago due to concrete cancer. There is no tolls on this crossing. There are also a number of very old crossings, like the bridge at Gunnislake New Bridge in my constituency. This crossing is not fit for large heavy lorries and has on many occasions suffered damage and been out of action. the local Labour councillor for Gunnislake has indeed highlighted air quality of the village and indeed suggested that another bridge is built. One could ask if the Shadow Chancellor would agree to that. I also note that in 2012 the government deferred the debt on the Humber Bridge by £150 million, conditional on the tolls being halved. All I'm asking is that the Tamar crossings are treated in the same way. These crossings are vital for both Cornwall and Plymouth and complement each other. They are quite rightly linked by the Act of Parliament and must never be separated. If an incident occurs on the bridge, the Toll Point Ferry service is necessary, and I would ask that any financial contribution is also conditional on the current timetable for the Toll Point Ferry being retained on at least the current levels of service. Sadly, some local opposition councillors and indeed some MPs have made comments in the press about a reduced service for the ferry if no toll revision order is granted, which is unacceptable. It is time to stop this politically motivated scaremongering. I've already said I won't give way. Motivated.
The lady has made it plain, I'm afraid, that she's not giving way. Mrs. Murray.
And on this important matter for residents of both Cornwall and Plymouth, which in my opinion should surmount party politics. And I would refer the honourable gentleman who's just tried to intervene on me, Mr Deputy Speaker, that I was going on a report on the Spotlight News this evening that said a Member of Parliament a long way from where the bridge is and the ferry is had suggested that the ferry be charged more. I now want to turn to the future of the crossings. As already mentioned, a working group, including representatives of all user groups, MPs and local councillors and local authorities, should be set up by the Minister, and I believe they should look at putting this crossing on the same basis as the Dunheved Bridge on the A30, which is one of some 10,000 bridges maintained by National Highways. But in the meantime, I ask the Department for some contribution towards the maintenance costs of the Tamar Bridge from National Highways. I finally want to expand on the modernisation of the toll collection system and updating to ANPR. Queues build up frequently because of tag failure and other matters related to the toll collection system. The result is missed appointments, simply not getting to work on time for many people from Plymouth and South East Cornwall. It also has a knock-on effect on the wider area of the road, with the road hauliers telling me that research has found that for every minute an HGV sits in traffic, it accrues a cost of £1.30 a minute. With respect to congestion on the crossings like the Tamar at peak times or heavy congestion, if an HGV is sat in traffic for 60 minutes, that will represent a costed increase of £78 per goods vehicle. Purely time simply spent sitting in traffic. A system of ANPR would help alleviate this, and I would ask the Minister to consider to cover the costs of the toll booth removal in the next 5-year major road network programme. Minister, 6,300 people signed the petition sponsored by the member for Plymouth Moorview and myself. These people object to the toll increase following so closely to the increase in January 2023, which would, as I have already said, double it in 4 years. It is now within the gift of the Secretary of State to refuse, and we ask him to do this. We know that we need to find alternative funding, and as I have outlined this evening, annual funding from the RIS3 programme. One final ask for me is that a public inquiry is held before any decision to increase the toll is made. This has happened in the past for all but one toll revision order, and our constituents must be able to have their say. Minister, we received a copy of the letter from the joint chairs of the Joint Committee sent to the Secretary of State last Friday, which has been copied to all MPs in Plymouth and Cornwall, stating an intervention by your department supporting the crossings may enable the tolls to be frozen. Our petition was supported by the members for South West Devon, Torridge and West Devon, Camborne and Redruth and North Cornwall, Truro and Falmouth. I hope that you will look favourably on this request to help freeze the Tamar toll tax for our constituents, and also immediately pull together a working group, or at least provide support for us to set one up locally, in order that a future, fairer, way of financing these crossings can be found. An intervention by your department supporting the crossings may enable the tolls to be frozen. Much has been made about levelling up. Doing away with this extra tax on the people of our area would be the single greatest thing that could be done to achieve this. It would create a level playing field for business, stop a regressive tax on residents which is in no way related to how much people can pay, and it would also help to allow free port status for Plymouth flourish. I ask the government to help now and look in the longer term at righting what the government could not afford to do just after World War II. Thank you.
Minister. Guy.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is an honour and a privilege to respond to my honourable friend and my esteemed colleague, the member for South East Cornwall, because she has once again made the case for her constituents with her usual assiduous verve and great passion, and I salute her for that. This is not the first time that she has raised this matter in the House of Commons, Mr. Deputy Speaker, nor, I suspect, will it be the last. And it is not the first time that I have received correspondence, which I receive on a virtually bi-monthly basis, to be perfectly fair, from the Honourable Lady. But I salute her for that, I really do, because what she is doing is she is standing up for her constituents. And this is an issue that dates back some considerable period of time, and clearly I'm going to have to choose my words a little carefully today, because she will understand that given there is an application for a toll revision received on the 2nd of May, this will then be considered by the Secretary of State in accordance with the Transport Charges Act of 1954, and as such it is a quasi-judicial decision that I do not want to in any way prejudice. But I want to try and give her the answers I possibly can in as full a detail as I possibly can today. I am also conscious that there is a petition that was dated the 23rd of March, put forward by the Honourable Gentleman for Plymouth Moor View, the Honourable Lady for Truro, for South West Devon, for North Cornwall, and Camborne, and others. And to their great credit, they have made the case, as have, what is honestly the case, thousands of residents of the local area, and it is to their credit that they have been able to come to the House, make their case, and be heard in an appropriate way. I'm not going to give way at the present stage, I'm so sorry. So I'm conscious, of course, of the detailed file of correspondence dating back some considerable time. She will be aware that there are a number of bridges and tunnels on local public roads up and down the country, which are either operated by the local highway authority or by private companies. And in those cases, the tolls continue to help repay the costs of construction and continued maintenance of those crossings. I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of the 1957 Tamar Bridge Act, because I think I would fail to speak with such eloquence as the Honourable Lady, who clearly knows that Act and the consequential secondary provisions, the schedules, and all matters pertaining, and probably has read the committee notes in great detail as well. So I'm not going to get into that in a great deal of detail. But clearly, the Tamar Bridge and the Tor Point Ferry are tied together under that Act, and the legislation ensures that proceeds from the crossing are ring-fenced and expenditure is limited to the operation, maintenance and improvements of the crossings. But it also crucially limits any unjustified accumulation of reserves, and whilst the bridge and the ferry are jointly owned and operated by Cornwall Council and Plymouth City Council, we have to be conscious, as she rightly outlined, this is a vital piece of infrastructure, with I think something in the region of 18 million vehicles crossing a year. And she rightly makes the point on behalf of her constituents, but also the freight industry benefit massively, whether that is the RHA, who I met with today, who are passionate about making that particular point. And it is clearly the case that the money needed to operate, maintain and improve the two crossings presently comes from toll charges, and without any specific funding from the government or from the owners of the two crossings. However, I do want to address a couple of points There is some contribution that is made in an indirect way, because National Highways makes an operational contribution, as I understand it, each year that enables the Tamar Bridge Committee to monitor and operate the Salt Ash Tunnel tidal flow system. And she will be aware that, announced just recently, there is funding obviously for the A38 Manadon Interchange Transport Scheme promoted by the Council. That's in the sum of approximately £132 million, with an outline business case stage of £156 million. And communications on that are going out shortly. And similarly, there have been announcements made in relation to the A374, 386 and 364 Plymouth Improvement Schemes, which I hope all would welcome, which is in the sum of £42 million towards the total estimated scheme at OBC of £49 million. She'll also be aware that the government have provided, on the back of the increased settlement at the last budget in 2023, and also by reason of the decisions on HS2 second leg, enhanced funding arising out of the 8.3 billion that is shared out around the local authorities, but obviously with a £36 million total for 24-25 for Cornwall, and an increased total again in relation to Plymouth, as I understand it. Now, in relation to the specifics, on the 8th of February, in my response to my honourable friend's parliamentary question and in subsequent correspondence, I have set out the position in relation to river and estuarial crossings that will normally be funded by tolls, recognising the extra cost of their construction and maintenance and also the substantial benefits for users. The Prime Minister then also answered my honourable friend at Prime Minister's questions on the 20th of March, when he was pleased to indicate that the Transport Minister would be addressing this matter shortly, to which I was, of course, delighted to receive the instruction from the PM at PMQs. But he explained, without going into the Hansard in detail, that any application for a toll revision whereby the responsible authorities can seek a change would need to be considered by the Secretary of State for Transport, who is my boss. Since that exchange, I can confirm that a toll revision application in respect of the Tamar crossings was received on the 2nd of May. The next step in this process is that an application for a toll increase will be advertised in the local press, advertising details of the proposal to users of the crossings. There is then a 42-day objection period. If there are any objections to the proposed revisions that are not subsequently withdrawn, whether from individuals or collective bodies, a public inquiry is then held. Where such an inquiry is held, the Secretary of State must have regard to its findings when deciding whether or not to revise the toll. I cannot address the findings of the Secretary of State, but clearly all representations made on these issues are considered. And clearly, my honourable friend will make many representations. I think that is a given. I'm not going to give way. I'm going to echo the honourable lady's approach. It is the responsibility of the Tamar Bridge and Tor Point Ferry Joint Committee to work to find efficiencies in the operating costs so the crossings are run as cost-effectively as is possible. I also want to set out and raise the important initiative that has been taken forward locally, the Tamar Bridge and Tor Point Ferry Joint Committee, who have agreed their Tamar 50 approach. I cast no aspersions on whether it is a good or bad approach. It is not appropriate for me to do so, but it's important that I put on the record that the government is aware of this. And clearly, the 9-point plan that they set out, which provides users of the crossings with a more stable and certain future, where ideally there is a degree of confidence in the way ahead and a way in which we can see and experience visible improvements to the structure and the critical safety works and the operational necessities that apply need to be seen. The plan, as I understand it, includes work to look at the feasibility of free-flow tolling, and this is something that could be considered when a suitable funding source becomes available. She has addressed me on that point, and I take her points with due seriously. As the PM outlined on the 20th of March, this is a real opportunity for key stakeholders to make their views about the crossings heard I would encourage all colleagues and all constituents, not just the thousands who submitted the petition with their very strongly held views, not just the many letters that my honourable friend has written, but all individuals to come forward with their views.
Will you allow me to come forward with my view now?
I don't think it appropriate in the 7 circumstances. So in these particular circumstances, bearing in mind the individual restrictions I have in addressing these points, I want to make it clear my honourable friend has put her points strongly on the record. We take due notice of that. There is a quasi-judicial process that follows, and we hope that that will be expedited and take place very soon.
Question is that this House to stand adjourned. Does many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Order, order.